Good day, ladies and gentlemen. This is Dr. Frel, your professor. Good morning. Our discussion today is about Republic Act 7877, known as the Anti-Sexual Harassment Act of 1995. Entitled, An Act Declaring Sexual Harassment Unlawful in the Employment, Education, or Training Environment and for other purposes. But first, we have to define sexual harassment. So what is this sexual harassment? This is an uninvited or an unwelcome verbal or physical behavior of a sexual nature, especially by a person in authority toward a subordinate, such as an employee or a student. When we say unwelcome class, this means unwanted or undesirable verbal or physical behavior of a sexual nature. So what is the declared policy of the state regarding this provision of the law? The state shall value the dignity of every individual, enhance the development of its human resources, to guarantee full respect for human rights, and uphold the dignity of the workers, employees, applicants for employment, or students or those undergoing training, instruction, or education. So, towards this end, all forms of sexual harassment in the employment, education, or training environment are hereby declared unlawful. So, class, the law is very clear that with this policy mentioned earlier, the state prohibits all forms of sexual harassment, declaring it to be unlawful. Now, what are these forms of sexual harassment? There are 3 forms of sexual harassment, such as physical, verbal, and other forms. So, what comprises physical sexual harassment? This includes 1. Malicious touching, 2. Overt sexual advances, and gestures with lewd insinuations. When we say malicious touching, class, these are those mean or nasty touching done by a superior toward a subordinate. When we say overt sexual advances, these are sexual advances that are obvious or being displayed, while lewd insinuations, these are those lustful insinuations that are being displayed in the form of gestures. Then for verbal form of sexual harassment, this might include requests or demands for sexual favors or some lurid remarks or loud remarks pertaining to sexual favors. And other forms of sexual harassment may include the use of objects or pictures or graphics, letters or writing notes with sexual underpinnings being shown or thrown to a person or to a subordinate by his superior. Now, class, let's classify sexual harassment. First classification are those that falls under grave offenses. So what are these grave offenses? This includes unwanted touching of private parts of the body, such as the genitalia, the buttocks, or the breast. Second is any form of sexual assault. And third, malicious touching. We have also a requesting for sexual favor in exchange for employment, for promotion, local or foreign travels, favorable working conditions or assignments, a passing grade, the granting of honors or scholarship, or the grant of benefits for or payment of a stipend or allowance, and or other analogous cases. So again, class, those are grave offenses that falls under the first classification of sexual harassment. Then the second classification is that of less grave offenses. So this includes first, unwanted touching or brushing against victim's body. Second is the pinching, not falling under grave offenses that we discussed earlier. Then the third, derogatory or degrading remarks or innuendos directed toward a member of one's sex or one's sexual orientation or used to describe a person. Then next is verbal abuse with sexual overtones and other analogous cases as mentioned earlier. So again, class, these are the less grave offenses falling under the characteristics of sexual harassment. Then the third one is those that falls under light offenses. So this includes surreptitiously looking or staring a look of a person's private part or worn undergarments. No? Second is telling sexist or smart jokes or sending this through text, electronic mail, or other similar means that causes embarrassment or offense and is being carried out after the offender has been advised that they are offensive or embarrassing, or even without such advice, when they are by their nature clearly embarrassing or offensive or vulgar. Then malicious leering or ogling or staring. Another is the display of sexually offensive pictures, materials, or graffiti. Then next are unwelcome inquiries or comments about a person's sex life, and unwelcome sexual flirtation, advances, or propositions. Then we have making offensive hand or body gestures at an employee, persistent unwanted attention with sexual overtones. Then we have unwelcome phone calls with sexual overtones causing discomfort or embarrassment or offense or insult to the receiver, and other analogous cases. So what is the purpose of this law? This is to guarantee that the learning and working environment is free from any sexual harassment and is conducive for a harmonious and productive work and study. So in attaining this purpose, the law seeks to value the dignity of individuals and protect the human resources of the country by guaranteeing full respect for the human rights of the people. So my next question, class, is who are punishable or held liable in this act? Of course, we have the workers or the employees. Then we have the applicants or candidates for employment, students also, or those undergoing training in an institution or education, such as, of course, trainees. Then we have the employer or the head, the employee who belongs to higher level, We have the manager or the supervisor or the agent of the employer. Or class, anybody else who has authority, influence, or moral ascendancy over the offended. When you say ascendancy class, this means someone who is governing or controlling influence over another. Then any person who directs or induces another to commit any act of sexual harassment. And any person who cooperates in the commission of the act by another without whom it would not have been committed. Class, please be reminded that when we speak of sexual here, sexual does not just involve the act itself, but anything that has to do with or related to the reproductive organs or a behavior which is sexually motivated or has sexual desires. So this may include elementary or high school teacher, a college or university professor, a college or university instructor, a coach or a trainer. So my next question, class, is where is this applicable? This might be applicable in a workplace, in a school, or any other place of training, institution, or education. My next question is where this sexual harassment may take place. 1. It may be in the premises of the workplace or office or of the school or training institution. Or it might be in any place where the parties were found as a result of work or education or training responsibilities or relations. Or it might be at work or education or training related social functions. It might also be class while on official business outside the office of school or training institution, or during work or school or training related travel. It might also be at official conferences, fora, symposia, or training sessions, or by telephone, cellular phone, fax machine, or electronic mail. So now, when a sexual harassment committed, let's discuss first in a work-related or employment environment. This is when a sexual favor is made as a condition in the hiring or in the employment, re-employment, or continued employment of said individual, or in granting said individual favorable compensation, terms of conditions, promotions, or privileges, or the refusal to grant the sexual favor results in limiting, segregating, or classifying the employee which in any way would discriminate, deprive, or diminish employment opportunities, or otherwise adversely affect said employee. So that pertains, class, to the work-related or employment environment. Another class is if the above acts would impair the employee's rights or privileges under existing labor laws, or if the above acts would result in an intimidating, hostile, or offensive environment for the employee. Now, class, how about in an education or training environment? Okay, first, against one who is under the care, custody, or supervision of the offender. Second, against one whose education, training, apprenticeship, or tutorship is entrusted to the offender. And third, when the sexual favor is made a condition to the giving of a passing grade or the granting of honors and scholarships or the payment of a stipend, allowance, or other benefits, privileges, or consideration. Or when the sexual advances result in an intimidating, hostile, or offensive environment for the student, trainee, or apprentice in an education or training environment. Okay, class, now my next question is, what procedures to follow once harassed? First, just come out and complain about the harassment that you experienced. Second, you have to report or escalate the act of sexual harassment to your immediate superior or to the superior in the school. The next is, your immediate supervisor will conduct his own investigation to confirm the facts and the details of your allegation and to coordinate with the alleged offender's boss first or teacher first. Then, once confirmed, then the alleged offender's boss or the teacher will consult and coordinate with the human resource officer, or in the case of the school, with the guidance counselor or the student services officer. Then after that, the HR officer follows the discipline management process, part of which is its own investigation procedure. So in the case of the schools, then there will be disciplinary committee to look into the claim of harassment. And once the investigation has been conducted, then a closure memo is served if the alleged offender is not found guilty, or the prescribed sanctions are enforced if otherwise. So that is the usual procedure that we follow once we experience harassment in the school or in the working environment. Okay, so that would be all, class, for this topic. And for your activity, this is the question. As a future educator, how can you ensure a learning environment that is free from acts of sexual harassment? So just submit your answers in the Google Classroom. Again, this is your professor saying thank you for watching. See you in the next video.